Did you know someone can take a weekend course, learn to inject, and offer med spa services with little or no medical director oversight? It's a dangerous gap. Today, I sit down with Kristen Jacobs, a physician who's been working in the medical aesthetics industry since 2008. You'll learn what a medical director actually does and what to do if complications happen like vascular occlusion. We also walk through the new MedSpa Board certification standards, setting a safety baseline from verified supply chains to emergency protocols. Whether you're a patient or a med spa owner, certification helps protect you both. Stay until the end as Dr. Jacobs shares why she avoids injecting certain high-risk facial areas. Please consider subscribing, and let's get into it. Hi, this is Dr. Kate Dee, and I'm excited to talk to Kristen Jacobs today. She is another physician who's been in the medical aesthetic space for many, many years now, and she's been on the podcast before. And we're going to go over exactly how to get certified by the MedSpa Board and what those requirements are. And I'm going to introduce her all the requirements, and we're going to go over what it is for our practices to qualify. So are you ready, Kristen?
I am ready. I'm excited for you. First of all, congratulations on this. And I'm so excited to hear what all you have to say.
Yeah, well, cool. So I have in front of me the list of requirements, and I just thought we would just kind of go over them and talk about how we comply and what we're trying to get at here to make sure that everyone complies with this and why it's so important. And so for other doctors or, med spa owners who might be listening to realize just kind of how simple it is to get certified if you're already legally compliant. But then also for consumers, anybody listening at home who is wondering, what the heck and why this is a big deal, to understand what we're requiring and why it's so crazy to go to a place that's not actually complying with this stuff, right?
Right.
So
Agree.
let's just launch right into it. Okay. So the very first thing on the list is licensure. Okay. So everyone in the spa has to have an active license to do the thing they're doing. Okay. And actually has to have a license at all. Right? So can you tell me a little bit about like your staff and what the license situation is?
Right. So that sounds like the easiest thing in the world, right? Like
Right.
why would you have anything that, or why would you have somebody doing something that's not licensed? But every single state is different on the requirements of each person can do in the office. So the only other, I'm an MD, and so obviously I have my license, but the only other truly licensed provider that I have currently is a physician's assistant. So I don't have any RNs or NPs or anything like that. I also don't
Mhm.
have any estheticians. The state of Illinois, which is where I am, is a little bit iffy on what estheticians can do. And so it just makes us really stay in that compliance. I don't want to go outside of the lines. I want to make sure that I'm sticking with what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Yep.
And so in my place, there's actually 3 MDs, 2 nurse practitioners, PA, uh, 4 master estheticians, which we have here in Washington. That's an unusual license. That's, I think, only about 8 states that has a master esthetician license. And so the key thing is when you do apply or a med spa that applies, they'll have to list their staff members
Mhm.
and their license numbers. And that'll include the state license and then also their NPI number. And for anyone who doesn't know, the National Provider Index is a list of every medical provider that's actually licensed in the country. So, and we're going to, as the MedSpa Board is just going to verify that all the people who are working there actually have an active license and they're qualified to do the things they do. So that seems pretty straightforward, right?
Right.
Like, you would think this wouldn't be that complicated, except that, many places have providers doing these treatments, whether it's injectables or laser, that do not have a license of any
Right.
kind, right?
Right.
And you'd think, well, how's that possible? Well, because nobody's watching, nobody's requiring
Right.
anybody
Right.
to be legally compliant. This and the MedSpa Board, we are voluntary. Nobody has to get certified, right? But there are many places, and if you look at the headlines, and I know we've talked about the lady who died in Texas, but the person who killed her had no license of any kind. Okay. And so obviously a place like that would not be able to get certified.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
Okay. All right. So that's like the
Okay.
simplest thing here.
That's
Okay.
simple. Yes.
Let's move on. Let's move on to the medical director because this is
Okay.
really a big topic. Okay. So I'm just going to read to you from our requirements. So the medical director has to have an active MD or DO license, or if it's one of the states that allows this, a nurse practitioner can be the medical director. There are very few that allow a PA to be the medical director. There are, I think, maybe 5 states that allow that. They have to be qualified and active. That means that the medical director, this is their practice. Every single patient who comes through that practice is their patient. So they have to understand aesthetics. They have to have the appropriate education, training, and experience and competence to administer and delegate and supervise each aesthetic medical treatment at the spa. They have to ensure appropriate supervision of each medical aesthetic treatment. They have to accept ultimate responsibility for the safety of the patients in that spa. They have to ensure that the medical spas providers are trained and qualified to provide the procedures that they've been tasked to provide. They have to ensure the medical spa is equipped with all the necessary equipment, supplies, and processes to address medical complications and emergencies. And they have to develop and sign written protocols for aesthetic medical treatment to be performed at the med spa. Okay. So obviously, you're the medical director of your spa, and you've been doing this for how many years now?
Well, since 2008. So I think this is my
2008.
18th
So,
year. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
long time.
Right.
So, you know, can you talk a little bit about those things that you're doing, but then also, why this is important, what compared to like these other places that have medical directors who don't actually do any of these things?
Right. And that's unfortunately, that is a lot of the medical
Mhm.
spas that are out there. The medical director
Yeah.
is not involved at all. They just put their license on record. And to me, that's extremely scary. Right.
Yeah.
Like you as the medical doctor, let's say a nurse practitioner in some of the states, like you should know what's going on and you should understand what the laser procedure could do. And it is just a really scary thing, in my opinion. So with in our clinic, because there's a couple different things going on that you had said too, because you mentioned supervising. So in the state of Illinois, you have to have an MD, an NP, or a PA for certain supervising roles, meaning certain treatments that can be done. So it's not just about being that medical director, it's making sure that you're following compliance as far as who's supposed to be on site when certain procedures are being done. So this is
Right.
again is why I don't necessarily, it's not that I don't want an esthetician or don't want an RN. It's just that right now it's not
Right.
really in the cards for us. So an MD has to be on site or an NP or PA. The other thing is we're one of those states. Illinois is one of those states that MPs can technically own their own practice. But what really bothers me is that they have to have 4,000 hours. Well, they're not getting 4,000 hours of aesthetics and then going out and opening up their own practice.
Right.
They're just saying, well, I have 4,000 hours as an NP. It could be an ICU, it could be just on the med floor, and then they're able to open up a practice in aesthetics when they have no background or no training. So you can tell I feel very passionate about this part of it.
Yeah.
And I really am passionate about the medical director being 100% involved. And I am, not with every single treatment, but I'm a phone call away if I'm not on site, or I feel like I'm on site all the time. So,
Right. And the thing is that the reason this is a big deal is that traditionally in the practice of medicine, you go to medical school, you go through residency, and you learn, your specialty, whatever that is. And then you practice, it's your practice. And if
right,
you hire people under you, then you can supervise them.
right,
But what's happening in aesthetics in this country is that the lowest level provider is going to a weekend course, learning a basic skill of like how to do an injection, literally spending a couple hours doing that. And then they are busy trying to find a medical director who is willing to put their name on it, right? So for whatever price, how much do I have to pay someone a month? to have someone loan me their license so that I can go off and do this thing I just learned over a weekend.
Right.
And that is unfortunately the norm now.
It is.
And so the medical directors, they're finding whoever they can find. So, unlike the doctor who went out and forged, a practice and learned aesthetics, because there's no residency in aesthetics. You have to get training, but you have to have a medical background. So you have to be able to know anatomy and treat emergencies. And there are so many different interactions, complications that you can have if you have certain diseases, if
Right.
and we've learned about those because we went to med school. So someone who went to a weekend course doesn't know about any of those things, right? So what happens is there's a market for medical directors out there. And that price has gone lower and lower since you and I have been in doing this business, because for me, it's been not quite 11 years now. And for you, even longer, right? It used to be a little less common when we started and the price was higher, right? Because why would any doctor loan you their license
Right.
and take all that liability on for not much money? I mean, that sounds really scary to me. I'd never in a million years sponsor someone that I didn't know.
No.
But now there are so many people doing it and especially there are so many nurse practitioners willing to be the medical director. Because
Absolutely.
I don't think they realize the kind of liability they have. But either way, the price has gone from several $1,000s a month to about $500 a month.
Right.
And most people are out there trying to find a cheapo medical director who's not related, doesn't show up, may not even be in that state, doesn't even do aesthetics, has no oversight whatsoever, and probably doesn't even realize they're taking on the malpractice liability. Like anything goes wrong, it's their butt on the line, not
Right.
this untrained, person who doesn't have even insurance, right?
Right.
So it's very, very common. And this is how all these illegal places pop up, where they actually do technically on paper have a medical director that's somewhere, right? And that's
Mhm.
how they're buying their Botox or whatever neurotoxin or other products they're getting. So if you've been listening to the show, you know I've got stories for days about what goes on in med spas. I finally put them all in a book. It's called MedSpa Mayhem. I wrote it because I got tired of hearing about people getting hurt by providers who have no business holding a syringe. You'll read about real patients, real nightmares, but more importantly, you'll know exactly what to look for when you walk into any med spa and what questions to ask. It's part expose, part survival guide, and it might just save your life. MedSpa Mayhem will leave you informed, entertained, and a little shocked at what's really going on behind the business of the aesthetics industry. The link is in the episode description. Read it before you book your next appointment, because beauty should never come at the cost of your safety, which you can only buy these things if you are a doctor, if you have a medical director. But these non-medical people or, nurses or lower people who can't practice medicine on their own, they're basically renting out someone else's license.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're interviewing the medical director and asking them these questions and finding out what their knowledge is, how often they show up at the spa, do they know the staff, are they really well aware of their training, are they monitoring it, do they respond to emergencies, are they involved in any way? And they have to sign an attestation saying, yep, that's what I'm doing. And so my guess, okay, is I don't know a lot of doctors who would say they were doing this when they weren't, and then sign an attestation that they were doing it when they weren't.
I would
So
hope not, right? Yeah.
So I think a lot of these kind of, I call them fake medical directors, but absent medical directors, I think a lot of them would just be like, no, I'm not signing that.
Right.
I'll take the $500 a month, but I'm not putting, put this in writing. I'm not doing it.
Right.
So that is the big step that we're doing with that.
And I think that's huge. I mean, quite honestly, it terrifies me having my license out in my own clinic and knowing that the people under me,
Absolutely. Like I have to know my people
right.
absolutely inside and out. And I need, if ever there's somebody who's like not, I can't function. I can't sleep. Right.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So if you are an actual doctor who knows medicine and the person under you like isn't the best or isn't knowledgeable enough, you won't be able to tolerate it because it's like
No.
this is in our DNA, right? Like
Right.
we care about humans, we care about health, and we don't first do no harm. We absolutely don't want to harm
Right.
anyone. And there's nothing more harmful than doing something elective that has a bad outcome. So
Right.
we just don't want that, right?
No, and it's not
So
just, it's not about the money to us. Like, it really is
oh
about
no.
the results. And like you said, the humans and the
Yes.
way that we can help people. And I think
Yes.
that this is so important. And the unfortunate thing of all these, doctors or a lot of nurse practitioners that are lending out their license, it is about the money. And it's so sad and scary.
Well, and the thing is we're in a capitalist society and people need to make money. You have to have a business.
Sure.
But as a physician, like I can just tell you that like, yeah, we want to make a living, but we would never in a million years want to make a living off of harming anybody or giving someone something they didn't need medically. Like we don't, that's not, who we are. I mean, I'm sure there's a subset of doctors who are unscrupulous and awful people. But I mean, there's always a subset
Of course.
of bad actors out there, right? And we can't prevent those people from existing or doing whatever. But as a consumer, your goal is to find someone like you, Kristen or me, who really cares about you, like doesn't want to just sell you a bunch of stuff, right? And I think that having a medical director involved is the key to that. Not that people, lower down on the hierarchy don't care. They absolutely do.
Of course. Of
But the
course.
people who are busy cutting corners, they just want the money.
Right.
They want the
Right.
money and they don't
Right.
care,
They don't
right?
care.
And they also don't know the possible negative outcomes, like all these people who are non-medical setting up IV bars. They don't know that actually that is like super crazy dangerous. They don't even
Right.
realize that. They're like, "Oh, this is a great business idea." And
Right.
that's what they know, right?
Right.
So, okay. So the next topic is doing a good faith exam,
Uh-huh.
which obviously in your place, so well let's just define what that is for people. So, and we've talked about this also on the podcast before, but a good faith exam is when you're a new patient and you establish a new doctor-patient relationship with a new place, new doctor, and only a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA working under a doctor can do that. Okay. A nurse cannot, estheticians cannot. And so you have to have the right personnel performing that initial assessment and plan. They're supposed to do a whole full, history, physical, figure out what a treatment plan is and prescribe a treatment. Okay. That's what a good faith exam is. So can you talk a little bit about like what you guys do and also, why this is such a big deal in our industry?
Right. So we also do this annually. So it's not just a new patient. So this has to be
Right.
done every single year, which, really is a time suck when you have everybody at the same time needs their good faith. But basically, what we do is we review everybody's medical history. So what medications they're on, what kind of surgeries they've had. Do they have any metal implants? Because that's going to determine what treatments we could do. A pacemaker, you can't do
Sure.
radiofrequency if you have a pacemaker. So we have to ask all of these questions so that we can create that treatment plan and or say, oh, absolutely not. This patient can't do this or can't do that. Something as simple as a milk allergy and how you can't use Dysport. There's all these little simple things that we need to know. So a very thorough medical exam is absolutely imperative when they come in. But like I said, we do it every single year as well. So we have in our system, it will say good faith is due, on whatever date, and then it pops up automatically, thankfully.
Yeah.
So that's probably the one good thing about our electronic medical record system is that it does keep us on track for that. And then the MA will actually go through all of that, just like if you were going to a regular doctor's office. And then when I come in the room, I go through it again, and then we have a sheet that's just for the doctor or the RPA to sign off on. So we're making sure that we've got everything updated. And then I go through and check all the boxes. The patient has to sign it. Then I have to say
Mhm.
patient is cleared for all treatments or they are not cleared and these are what they cannot do. And then I sign it. And then that gets tucked away for a year. So but we do ask every time they come in anyway. Like, I mean, this is a medical place. This is a doctor's office. So every time you go to have your blood pressure checked, the nurse is going to ask you, or the MA is going to ask you, are you on any new medications? Are you, has anything changed with your medical history? So that's how we treat it for every visit. And then we'll update as we go. But the good faith is annually that we do.
Right. And it's required in every state. It's illegal to practice without that. Okay. We also have a form that basically lasts for 1 year. So it will also pop up as not, needs to be redone so that we get triggered to always, refill that out. And one of the big things that people just seem to not understand, both consumers and also providers who don't do a good faith exam, is that it actually matters if you have any medical thing, even just allergies, even just minor things you don't think about as being all that important. It actually can matter having Botox or laser or any of the other treatments that we do. And so, God forbid you have a complication because you just didn't know that was a problem, right?
Right.
And so a good faith exam has to be done by somebody qualified. So it can't be done by an RN or an esthetician. It has to be done by a doctor or a PA or a nurse practitioner. And that is also, it's skipped in a lot of med spas. So as part of this, we actually have to, we make sure that both the owner and the medical director, have that plan in place. And then of course, both of their attestations say, yes, we perform this good faith exam.
Right. That's great.
And you'd be amazed at how many places just don't ever do that.
Right.
So if you go into a place and you never see any of those level providers, if you see a nurse or an esthetician, you have anything medical done to you, totally not legal, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And like you said, it's very scary because there are a lot of them out there. And it is legal for them to do a Zoom call or telemedicine, or however I guess Zoom's probably not, but telemedicine. And quite honestly, I feel like that's a little iffy, but it is legal for them to
Yeah,
do
and
this.
that to me is in a gray area, and honestly,
Mhm.
I'm actually open to suggestions if anyone out there listening feels strongly about this, because it is legal to do a telemedicine good faith exam. So let's say you have a place that's entirely staffed with RNs, and they are not legally allowed to see a new patient or anything. A lot of these places will outsource their good faith exam and their prescription, so whoever's gonna prescribe the treatment, to a company that provides good faith exams. It's usually a 5-minute consult with a nurse practitioner, usually in a different state, and they're not really making an assessment of your skin or anything. What they're really doing is clearing you for stuff. So, making sure that you don't have certain diseases and conditions and stuff. And it's really interesting because for me, it's a very in between thing. Like, it's better than nothing because if you really do have a major contraindication to Botox, they will, they'll figure that they should anyway figure
They
that
should.
out,
Right.
right? But they're not really making the assessment. It really is like they're just, screening for a bunch of stuff. They're not really assessing your skin and prescribing stuff. So it's kind of like it's like a dotting of the I that's better than nothing, but it's not necessarily cool.
Right. So
It's not
the interest
necessarily kosher
right,
by
right.
me, but so
So
we
the
do
interest
everything in person. I
right,
assume,
right.
of course, you do everything in person.
We do. But
Yeah, and
last
it's really
year
hard to assess someone's skin on a video call.
it is.
Really hard. And
Last year I didn't have another provider. And so if even if a patient wanted to come in, let's say for Latisse or, for anything where I was not on site, I shouldn't say I didn't have a provider. I didn't have a PA or an MP. And so we
Mhm.
did try a telemedicine because I was a little bit on the desperate side. And so the interesting thing was with the company I used, they would only clear the patient for whatever service was that day. So that was
Mhm.
great, right? So if they had just the Diamond Glow, then that's all they would talk about. And they really did do a great job with that. They did not clear patients more than they did which was also very interesting. And to me, I was like, well, this isn't working out. I'm paying for, a company, and they did charge per patient and per treatment. So it was, like I said, it was interesting. So I do think that they
Yeah.
were a better level company. Honestly, I don't even remember what the name of the company was, but thankfully I didn't have to use them for very long. And I bet we only used them 4 or 5 times. And then I finally had somebody else who, I could bring on
Yeah.
to help. But it was interesting. So I think there's high quality companies out there. And then I also think it's the same as what we're talking about. I think there's some more, a little bit shadier companies out there as
Yeah. And
well.
I honestly think that that's going to be really hard to assess.
Right.
So I think that that will be part of our work will be figuring that out for if people apply for certification and they're using one of those services, then the service itself has to be evaluated. And
Right.
it's possible that over time, some of those companies they'll get vetted and they'll be like, okay, you guys do an adequate job. And then maybe other ones don't. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because they probably can't control if they've got 20 nurse practitioners in 20 different states. They probably can't control each one and the quality of each visit. And they're probably not monitoring every single thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Right.
if you're getting paid piecemeal as a nurse practitioner sitting at home to do a 5-minute piece of work, how much effort are you putting into that?
Right.
So
Right.
hopefully they're putting the proper amount of effort into that, but like
Yes,
I could see
hopefully.
problems with that model, but obviously every company is different and trying to to provide quality services,
Right.
in that. So I think that's going to be a tough area for evaluating. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, and that
Okay.
is delegation.
Okay.
So I'll just read it to you. All medical services provided by licensed practitioners permitted to provide that service. Once a proper initial examination and diagnosis are made and the treatment plan is developed, the treatment may be performed by or delegated to a qualified provider under the following minimum requirements. The provider is trained and qualified to perform the specific treatment. The provider is properly supervised, and proper protocols have been developed by the qualified supervising physician or medical director to address complications and adverse events. So basically, the place is delegating the treatments to the proper people, and those people are safe, and those people know what they're doing. Yeah. And, as we've talked about, unfortunately, many, many, many med spas across the country have people providing services who have no qualifications to do that.
Right. So in Illinois, it's the same thing. So I mean, here's technically what the guidelines state is that I could delegate anybody to do anything without any kind of a license. We call them medical assistants. And estheticians can't inject a neuromodulator, but I could delegate a medical assistant to if I really wanted to. I mean,
Mhm.
I have reread and read and the delegation requirements, and it still blows my mind. I mean, I truly could teach somebody who isn't licensed to do some of the things. So
Right.
obviously,
Is
I
that very
say
common in Illinois?
I would say, well, I don't know the answer. It's more of, in my opinion, the clinics opening up illegally with the nurses owning it or somebody else. But
Yeah.
truly, if they are, thinking they're legal, then their medical director should be delegating. But how can they delegate because they're not on site? So it's this, in my
Right.
opinion, it's such a vicious cycle, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think, but I don't know the answer because I'm in my little bubble down in Southern Illinois. I don't think people that are just quote unquote medical assistants are injecting neuromodulator. But as the law states, I mean, they could. So
Yeah.
let's hope and pray that they're not and
And
they're actually, delegating correctly.
yeah, there are a number of states that have that. That's unusual. So most states would be illegal.
Right?
But the big one that we've seen is Texas that allows, if a doctor in Texas decides, this person can inject, it's my butcher, but I taught them how to inject Botox. That's actually legal as long as that physician takes full responsibility for
Right.
that person. And they don't even have to call him a medical assistant. So a lot of people probably listening to this do not realize that the word medical assistant has no meaning. There's
Yep.
no license, there's no
Nope.
training, there's no school, there's no nothing. Medical assistant, anyone could walk in off the street, get a job with a doctor's office, and get trained to, wipe down counters and hand a doctor things, and the doctor can call them a medical assistant. There is no school, no nothing that has no meaning, basically,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so these places, a lot of places will take an esthetician that's already working there and then train them to do something, doesn't matter what it is, call them a medical assistant. The one thing that makes sense to me is drawing blood. So you don't need any kind of degree or licensure to be a phlebotomist. You can go get trained, go get a job with LabCorp or one of those big, and start drawing blood for a living. You don't need a license for that.
Mhm.
Right. Which is interesting, right?
Right.
It's like a very unusual little piece of medicine that we need so much of that they're willing to farm it out to just about anybody, right?
Mhm.
But obviously somebody does that for a living, like they get really good at it, right? Because that's all they do all day.
Right.
But you're not really supposed to train a medical assistant to do medical things and let
Right.
them do that. That's not legal in the vast majority of states. There's a
Right.
couple of states. So Illinois, Oklahoma, and Texas for sure are all in that, where if a doctor deems it appropriate, they give that doctor the leeway to practice medicine the way they want, right? And those laws exist because they are relying very heavily on a doctor's judgment. And so, that's what happens when you have a licensure to do something that other people can't do. You defer to their judgment. Unfortunately, with medical aesthetics, what's happening, right, is Joe Schmo, the butcher, goes to a weekend course, takes a Botox injecting, lesson over the weekend, and then they again hire out, find a medical director for $500 a month, and then they put up a shingle, and before you know it, they're practicing medicine without a
Right.
license, which
Right.
is a felony.
Right.
So, okay. So let's move on to products. So
Okay.
the other requirement is that the spa must use legal FDA approved products.
Love it.
So, yeah. So can you tell us like where you get all your products and where you see people kind of cutting those corners?
Yes. So we get them directly from the company that makes them. I mean, I
Right.
know you can get stuff on Amazon. You can get stuff from Canada, Mexico, any other, country, but
Right.
we
And that's
always
all
make sure
illegal.
that's
Okay.
all
Like,
illegal. Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Saying
all illegal.
yes, all that part is illegal, but we get ours directly from the company that makes them. I mean, I refuse to get it from anywhere else. And we there, I don't know if you're going to get into this, but there are off-label uses, there's on-label uses. And so we go with I mean, obviously we're going to do a little off-label, but we're with the standard of care. And so I feel like that's probably a whole nother topic, but getting the products
It
from the
is.
company is an absolute must. We must stay within the expiration dates. There's just so many things that we look at. I mean, if, God forbid something expires, well, we don't use it. We throw it away. So we make sure that we're
Right.
using it. So obviously staying within those I think very important guidelines.
It's super important. So yes, of course, you need a contract with the makers of
Yes.
Botox and Dysport and all the things.
Yeah.
And you actually have to buy it in America. So it's not legal to import these products from other countries. And it's kind of interesting. There's two issues with that. One is you illegally import it. The Customs and Border Control, they get upset. The FDA gets upset because you're messing with taxes and you're trying to avoid taxes and tariffs now. And so that's like a more of a financial, illegal thing. But then also when you're importing it from other places, then the supply chain is not what it's supposed to be. And you don't know where it's been stored and you don't know what the expiration dates are. If you're illegally importing it from Asia or Europe, the expiration dates are, so first of all, they have different versions of things that are not FDA approved here, but also, you just don't know where it was stored. Was it on a
Right.
hot boat floating here from China over a month?
Right.
I mean, so there's problems with quality, even if the label says Juvederm, it's not necessarily something that is okay to inject once it lands in your office and you somehow
Right.
got it for cheap because you did that. And then there's tons of people ordering stuff off Alibaba. It's fake. It's fake. It's filled with other stuff. It's super dangerous. It could be contaminated with bacteria. So we are right now, and this may change, but right now we're just requiring the owner to sign an attestation saying that they have contracts with, Allergan and Galderma and the other companies. We don't have a plan to ask for a copy of the contract. I think it's really interesting because you can't prevent, so even somebody who has a contract with Allergan, they're getting actual Botox and they're paying full price for it. You can't control that they don't, on one day run short and like go online and try to order something illegally. But we're going to make them sign an attestation saying that they don't do that.
Right.
So, again, some of this is they could lie, right? But then they would be, lying and signing their name on the bottom line saying,
Right.
we never do this, and then they're doing it anyway. So, because part of what we're trying to do is make this simple and straightforward. We don't have an army of inspectors to go out and look in every cabinet and make sure they don't have any fake product there. Maybe someday we'll have the kind of ability to do that, but right now we don't have that.
I think
So
maybe at some point doing random checks, if you're starting to hear rumblings or something like that. But,
yeah,
and it sounds like you're a lot like I am, like we work on the honor system and I feel like everybody's going to tell you the truth. And why wouldn't they tell you the truth? But unfortunately, there's always like somebody that ruins it for,
there will be somebody, yeah. And we do plan to recertify every year. So we're going to ask them, and if we're requiring them to let us know if they change medical directors, and we have to interview the new medical director for them to stay compliant. Or each year we will do that so that hopefully, I mean, the thing is that it's better than what we have now, which is a free for all.
That's right. That's right.
There's just nothing. So, and then the other thing that there's not much to talk about, just that the owner has to comply with state laws. We will verify their ownership and that their corporate entity is legal, because that is also separately won't necessarily endanger patients, but it could. But there are laws that says who can own a medical practice, and we're going to make sure that it's legally owned. And then the last thing is about emergency preparedness. So can you talk a little bit about like what you do for that and, why that's important?
So with all of our, let's say, laser treatments first, because, worst case, they get a blister or they get, something. I mean, in my opinion, like all that stuff, yes, it would be terrible if it happens, but it's a little bit easier to fix versus like a vascular occlusion. But we have protocols on, burns, on rashes, on, anything that can go wrong. We have a protocol. The biggest thing is the front desk saying to the patient, come in, let us see you. I want to lay eyes on the person. I don't care what time of day it is. I don't care what day it is. We want to lay eyes on them. So I think in that sense, those are they're easier protocols to create, and they're standard and they're just in our little book, but it's more about training with the front desk and then of course our staff members. Also communicating with the patients. If you see this, or you may see this, then you need to give us a call. But getting into vascular occlusions, we have the emergency protocol in an emergency protocol box, plus everybody that is involved in that treatment has to go through this and walk and talk it out. I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually we need to do that again, because we try to do that annually, and I have a brand new team. So it's time to do that again. I'm training my PA on injectables. So I did make sure that all the printouts are there, and I went through it all, and I went through it with her. But I need to talk to the other people who are setting the room up or whatever. Where is everything located so that we know exactly how to get it, where to get it, and making sure that our Hylenex is not expired. And it's just there's so much that it comes down
having
to.
enough of it.
And having enough of it.
The most important thing here, right, is that, so we both agree. So having a vascular occlusion, which is when you clog a blood vessel, an artery, with filler, and hopefully in your hands, it's extremely rare. I think the last time we talked, we each had seen one in all our combined 30 plus years of experience.
Knock on wood. Where's my
Knock
wood?
on wood. I know. It's like, oh my God. It's the one
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
like if you know anything about medicine, it will keep you up at night,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
there was actually a recent TikTok my staff showed me of an injector who got a vascular occlusion herself, right? I think it was her own face. And she completely freaked out. So she was an injector herself. She had one. She was in tears. They didn't know how to treat it. They'd never heard about it. They went on TikTok to make sure other people knew about this thing, right? And she was an injector
Right.
herself.
Isn't that scary?
And this is the problem is that like you think, oh, of course, people know how to, no, they don't. They don't even know that it exists, right? So they're willy-nilly throwing filler in people. And this is how you can be scarred for life. You can have I interviewed one lady on the podcast last year who had a very severe vascular occlusion
Mm.
and she lost half of her nose.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
So she's scarred all up and down her face and literally has to wear a nasal prosthesis because the person who is treating her didn't know how to treat it. And so it's really important to know that people have those protocols in place because
Right.
generally, if you recognize it and you treat it right
It's
away, it's going
treatable.
to be
Right.
fine,
Right.
but you have to treat it right away. And if you let it go, I mean, the longer you let it go, the worse it
Right.
is. But if you let it go for 3 days untreated, you're not going to
In
fix it.
trouble. Right. What
Um,
area did that lady have injected? Because I want to
she
maybe
had her
mention that too.
nasolabial fold
Okay.
injected with
Okay.
Radius,
Oh,
which
okay.
which you and I would probably both agree should never be injected
Correct.
unless it's hyperdilute maybe. I don't use hyperdilute Radius, but so we've talked about this, but any filler that's not dissolvable, in my opinion, should not be injected. So
Agree.
that includes Radius and that includes Bellafill. I personally don't think either of those should even be on the market. But whatever, they're on the market,
Right.
but they are not treatable.
Right.
So anybody who understands what vascular occlusion is would just never want to use it because you just don't want to take that risk that your one in a gazillion is going to be, that, and then you can't do
Right.
anything about it. So
No.
we're going to
And
make sure that they acknowledge they have at least 16 vials of Hylenex in the fridge and that they practice a drill. We call it a code blanche in my
cold
office. We
blanche. I like it.
once a year and make sure they have up-to-date protocols and that they're aware and that the medical director is aware that they need to be at least available to respond to that. We have ultrasound in my office. Not
Oh,
everybody has ultrasound, but
right.
as a recovering radiologist, why wouldn't I have ultrasound?
See,
Um,
100%. Yes. I wish I was a recovering radiologist for that purpose.
You really don't. You
Yeah.
really don't. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that ultrasound is mandatory. It's very helpful though, especially if you know how to use it.
That's the key.
And they have to sign off that yes, we practice for
Right.
this, right?
So,
Um,
would you ever get into asking how many vascular occlusions have been in the clinic?
um,
And,
yeah.
and get into a little bit more detail about that because I feel
Well,
like
I think
that's
that's
important.
part of the medical director interview. Like, have you seen one? Have you managed one? I mean, I have. We've had two in my clinic that we've treated, but one was caused by someone else, and they walked in, and we recognized it, and we just treated it because that's. And then the one that we had, we treated immediately, and it was fine. And, if they've never seen one and, never treated one, well, I guess that's great that they haven't seen one, but they need to know what to do. Like
They
they need to
do.
show that they know what to do. Now, if they've had one a month,
That might
then
be a
that's a
problem.
really big problem.
Right.
I interviewed a nurse practitioner for a job once who told me that her previous employer would have one a month.
Oh my gosh.
And that just freaked me out. I was like, how is that even possible? And that was a big, big, big Bellafill injector. Now she's out of business now, so I don't have to worry about her existence anymore, but
Right.
it really freaked me out.
Yeah. Another question, and you probably already have this, but another question is what area are you treating? Because if you're a medical spa, in my
Yeah,
opinion, you don't need to be doing noses. You definitely don't need to be
right.
doing glabella. In fact, I
Yep,
rarely ever do nasolabial folds. And
yep.
so I think that's extremely important. But one more
Yes,
thing,
we don't do forehead either
right,
or
no
temples. We'll
foreheads.
do
Yeah.
Sculptra for temples, but not So yes, and so those are really important questions that we'll ask the medical director. I mean,
Good.
obviously, a rogue RN can do whatever they want, and you won't necessarily even know unless there's a
Right.
complication.
Right.
But, these are the reason we're talking about this is that these are areas that are very high risk for bad complications, and so we just don't go there. So there are areas of the face where the likelihood of occlusion is higher and the likelihood of bad outcomes from an occlusion, like going blind, are higher. So we do not touch those areas. So we don't touch noses either. We do
No.
not touch glabella. We do not touch forehead or temples.
Mhm.
We will do nasolabial folds, but we don't come anywhere near,
Yes.
where the vessels come up close to the skin. And then, of course, you have to know your anatomy in order to know to avoid those places. And
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing is having providers who really know what they're doing, so they know what's dangerous, and they just will never do that.
Right. Right. You
Um,
have to have a little bit of fear. You
yes.
really do.
For
And one of the things I was thinking as you were talking to somebody who hasn't had one, maybe offering resources. And I don't know if you want to
yes.
get into that because that maybe is legally kind of setting you up, but there's so many resources out there that if they hadn't, because I mean, I was in practice 15 years, 16 years before I saw my first one. I've
Mhm.
heard about it. I've watched it on, on like you said, TikTok being treated or whatever it is. But until
Yeah.
you're in that situation, it's you don't really know. I
Yeah.
mean, the bottom line is we know what to do, but if you've not done it, it is a little bit scary. So just thinking ahead,
No,
like,
I think that's so that's very much high on my agenda, like, once
good.
we get launched, what I'm hoping, assuming, if we do succeed in all of this, we're educating both the public and providers
Mhm.
on safety and best practices, and hopefully we provide a network, so people have each other to
Right.
help each other out, but also we're really thinking down the line of having educational resources for both consumers and providers on the website that they can access that will help them, figure stuff out.
Right.
We are not right now, it literally is it's very scrappy. It's like me and 7 other people just kind of
Mhm.
pulling the website together and getting launched. But if this works out, then, hopefully we'll be promoting not just transparency, but safety across the industry. And
Right.
and yeah, I mean, I want to be able to do as much as that of that as possible, as long as a lawyer doesn't say, "Hey, that's too much liability. You don't
Right.
have insurance for that." I don't, we can't guarantee any safety of any individual spa or service provider. But what we're trying to do is guarantee that they are abiding by the law.
Or they're
And right
saying
now,
they are.
that seems
Yes.
like a really low bar, like,
It's
illegal versus not.
right.
But there's so many illegal spas, it's out of control. It's so crazy. And so, right now that's my goal. And hopefully as we mature as an organization, we'll be able to provide more and more resources like
Right.
that.
I think it's incredible. I think it's
Yeah.
incredible. Yes.
So stay tuned. I think by the time this airs, we will be just about launching right then, hopefully within the next couple weeks. It's really, really exciting. We have a new logo I'll have to show
Oh,
to
yes.
you. Yeah, I'm literally expecting the final to be delivered to me today. It's really exciting.
I mean, like I said, congratulations. And this is so exciting, a much needed service. And it's not an if you will do well, you will. It's a when.
Let's hope.
You will, and it's a when. And the good thing is that I know you're gonna have so many people like myself who are going to support you 100%. Get certified, get our names out there so that we can get your name out there and say, "Hey," I mean, for a consumer, like, why wouldn't you want to go someplace that is certified?
Yeah.
I don't understand it, which is why we're having this conversation, which is why you started this new endeavor.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but I
Well,
don't
I
think
I I
consumerism.
truly believe that most people don't really understand just how many places are operating
Right,
illegally and just what those risks are.
right,
I just think that
right,
people don't know.
right.
And so if we reach enough people, especially if the movie gets made, we'll
Yes,
see. Don't know. Still working on that. But my, Hollywood producer colleague, he thinks it's totally going to get made. So that's exciting. So if we reach enough people, then, it will really become a common knowledge. And that's my hope. So
And that's
anyway,
so important.
yeah. So Kristen, thanks so much for talking with me today. It's always fantastic to speak with you. And for everybody listening at home, I will have all of Kristen's links. So if you are in the Illinois area, because it's Carbondale, did I get that right?
No, we're actually right
No.
outside of St. Louis. It's Glen
Okay.
Carbon. You're
Glen
close.
Carbon.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay,
Yeah,
I'm
so we're
terrible.
20 minutes from downtown St. Louis.
This is how
5
bad I
hours
am. I
south
don't
of
know the
Chicago.
Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So outside St. Louis in Illinois. So we'll have all those links in the show notes. So thanks so much. And we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and share it with a friend who's considering any aesthetic treatments. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me your biggest takeaway. I actually read them all. Let's keep each other safe and elevate the standards in the MedSpa industry.